Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something that might seem simple at first, but is, in fact, a gateway to something much deeper. Why do we treat our bodies as if they're machines we can run into the ground without consequence? Why do we ignore the subtle signs of nature, of time, of biology itself until it's too late? In old age, drinking water in the morning can be poison when you miss this, because it's not just about hydration. It's about understanding the timing, the wisdom of the body, and the fragility of life as it ages. This is not just a biological warning, this is a metaphor for how we live. You see, we ignore what matters when it matters most. We rush into routines without understanding context, and that ignorance, it becomes a poison. Today, I want to break down not only the science, but the psychology, the discipline, and the deep responsibility we carry toward our own health as we age. Because every small thing you ignore, like a glass of water at the wrong time, can be a symptom of a much larger neglect. Timing matters more than habit, especially with the aging body. This is a principle that is often overlooked in our culture, which is seen as if consistency alone were a virtue. But let me tell you something important. The value of a habit lies not just in its repetition, but in its appropriateness. And appropriateness changes as we change. As we grow older, our bodies begin to function differently. What worked for us in our youth may become detrimental in our later years. That's not a flaw, that's a fact of nature. Consider the act of drinking water first thing in the morning. For years, you might have heard health gurus say it's the best way to flush toxins, to jumpstart your metabolism, to get the body going. And that might be true for a young, healthy person. But what happens when the person drinking that water has a weakened cardiovascular system? What happens when the kidneys are slower to process? What happens when blood pressure responds differently to sudden changes in volume? In old age, the body becomes less tolerant of extremes of sudden shocks, even something as seemingly benign as a large glass of water on an empty stomach. This isn't about paranoia. It's about precision. When you're young, you can afford to be imprecise. The body compensates, it recovers. But as you age, the buffer shrinks. The price for mistakes becomes heavier. You don't bounce back, you break down. So while the young body is resilient, the aging body is meticulous. It demands respect. It demands that you pay attention not just to what you do, but when you do it. This is where the concept of timing enters. You see, we often mistake habit for wisdom. I've always done it this way, we say, but that's not wisdom, that's inertia. That's refusing to reevaluate what your body is telling you. And that refusal comes from a deeper issue, fear. Fear of change, fear of weakness, fear of confronting the reality that we're not invincible anymore. But ignoring those signals, ignoring the timing, can transform something beneficial into something harmful. Drinking water first thing in the morning seems harmless, but it's not just about hydration. When you've been asleep, your body is in a state of rest. Your blood is thicker. Your heart rate is low. Your kidneys are in a different rhythm. Suddenly dumping a large amount of water into that system can trigger stress responses. In some people, it may cause sudden drops in blood pressure or unexpected strain on the heart. It may disrupt electrolyte balance. And if that sounds dramatic, consider how many older adults wake up feeling dizzy, weak, or unsteady and assume it's just part of getting old. But what if some of that is preventable simply by adjusting the timing of what they consume? We live in a culture that treats all ages the same when it comes to advice, but biology doesn't work like that. Timing isn't just a luxury, it's a biological necessity. As we age, our hormonal cycles shift, our hydration needs change, and our tolerance for stress, yes, even the stress of water intake diminishes. That's not a sign of failure. That's a sign that your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to, adapting to a different phase of life. But your mind must adapt with it. Otherwise, you're living in a fantasy of your former self, and your body will pay the price. So the question is, are you listening to your body, or are you blindly following a habit that no longer serves you? You must learn to treat the body with the kind of awareness and responsiveness that it deserves. Not just because it's older, but because it's wiser. It has more to say to you now. The signals are quieter, yes, but they're more profound. And timing when you act, when you eat, when you drink, when you rest is no longer just part of the equation. It is the equation. Most people don't think about how quickly things can go wrong when the timing is off. They attribute the consequences to age itself, not realizing that often it's the mismatch between their habits and their body's current state that causes the damage. You can't live on autopilot anymore. Not in this phase of life. You have to earn your health with awareness. Every morning, every glass, every choice. What you ignore in youth becomes your enemy in old age. This isn't just a medical truth. It's a philosophical one. The habits you shrug off when you're young, the small signs your body gives you that you choose to overlook, the reckless indulgences you normalize, they don't disappear. They wait. They accumulate. And one day they return not as distant memories, but as consequences. Youth gives you the illusion of invincibility. You eat what you want, sleep when you want, push your limits without rest, and rarely suffer immediate repercussions. The body compensates. The body is forgiving. But that forgiveness is not infinite. It's more like a loan, temporary, conditional, and always expecting repayment. And when you get older, that debt comes due. In youth, you may ignore hydration. You may ignore posture. You may ignore posture. You may ignore sleep, discipline, nutrition. And it doesn't feel like it matters. You still get through your day. You still perform. You still recover. So you tell yourself, I'm fine. But that is the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves. I'm fine. Because a fine it doesn't mean optimal. It doesn't mean sustainable. It just means you haven't hit the wall yet. But the wall is coming. And what determines how hard you hit it is how much you've ignored along the way. The older version of you doesn't get a fresh start. It inherits everything you've done or neglected. It's the sum of your lifestyle, your mindset, your attention, or inattention to detail. So when you ignore hydration protocols in youth, when you treat your body like a machine that never needs recalibration, you set in motion patterns that harden with time. They become your baseline. And by the time you're forced to confront them, the cost of change is higher. The body doesn't bend as easily. The systems don't bounce back. And now what was once a mild issue becomes a chronic condition. Ignoring the morning impact of water intake is a perfect example. When you're young, your vascular system is elastic. Your kidneys respond quickly. Your electrolyte levels are stable. So drinking water at any time of day might feel harmless, but your older body is not the same. That same action at the wrong time can spike or drop your blood pressure, throw off your fluid balance, or stress your heart. It's not the water that's the problem. It's the context. And the context changes with age. The failure to respect that transition is what turns a basic act into a dangerous one. We must understand that time doesn't erase your mistakes. It reveals them. And the longer you ignore something, the stronger it grows in silence. Bad posture becomes chronic back pain. Sleep neglect becomes hormonal imbalance. Poor diet becomes inflammation, insulin resistance, heart disease. And yes, improper hydration becomes more than just thirst. It becomes confusion, fatigue, dizziness, even hospitalization. You don't feel it now because your youth is absorbing the shock. But one day it won't be there to shield you, and what you once ignored will stare you in the face with consequences you can't reverse. The truth is, we don't get away with anything, not in the long run. Life is structured in such a way that all debts are paid. Every decision leaves a trace. Every shortcut you take now becomes an obstacle later. And it's often the things that seem insignificant that turn out to be the most critical. Because small things, repeated daily, compound. They build the architecture of your future. And when you neglect them, that architecture becomes unstable. Youth gives you momentum, but momentum isn't direction. It's just movement. And if you're moving in the wrong direction, neglecting your body, ignoring timing, dismissing signals, you're only accelerating the damage. By the time you're older, you'll find that your enemy isn't just illness or pain. It's the ghost of your own inattention. It's the voice that once told you it doesn't matter, now whispering, you should have listened. So what you ignore in youth doesn't disappear. It matures. It grows with you. And eventually it demands your attention in a language you can't ignore. Pain, fatigue, dysfunction, disease. This is the law of the body, and it is as real as gravity. What you refuse to manage when you have the energy and flexibility to do so becomes something that manages you when you're at your most vulnerable. Physiology is not static. What once healed can now harm. This is one of the most profound and often uncomfortable truths we must confront as we age. The body is not a machine with fixed parameters. It is a dynamic, ever-evolving system that constantly responds to its internal and external environment. And yet many people approach their health with a rigid mindset, as if the same habits, routines, and assumptions that worked at age 25 will continue to serve them at 65. That is not just naive. It is dangerous. In your youth, the body has an extraordinary ability to compensate. You can stress it, neglect it, and still wake up the next day with minimal consequences. The systems within are fast, resilient, adaptive. Hormonal cycles are sharp. The kidneys filter efficiently. The heart recovers quickly. Digestion is robust. Sleep is deep and restorative, even if you don't prioritize it. You can eat poorly, hydrate inconsistently, push yourself past the point of exhaustion and somehow still perform. That ability can be deceiving. It creates a false sense of security, a belief that your body is permanently self-correcting. But physiology doesn't remain in that optimal state forever. Aging is not merely a number. It is a biological transformation. The organs that once functioned effortlessly now require more support. The cardiovascular system stiffens. Blood vessels lose elasticity. Kidney function slows. Hormonal rhythms become irregular. The same behavior that once triggered recovery and balance may now lead to imbalance, even harm. Drinking a large amount of water on an empty stomach in youth may have energized you. In older age, it can disrupt your blood pressure, overwhelm the kidneys, or create electrolyte imbalances. We have to begin understanding this shift not as a betrayal of the body, but as a new phase of its intelligence. Your physiology is not failing, it's changing. And your responsibility is to change with it. What once healed can now harm because the system you are applying that behavior to is not the same system anymore. Think about that. It's not just the action that matters, it's the context. And context is shaped by biology. You cannot apply a past solution to a present system without asking whether the conditions still support the same outcome. The tragedy is that many people don't make that distinction. They operate on autopilot. They cling to old habits with sentimental loyalty, thinking that if something worked before, it must be right forever. But that's not wisdom. That's stagnation. Wisdom is the ability to see when the rules have changed. It's knowing that adaptation is not weakness, it is strength. And to adapt, you must observe. You must listen to your body with the humility to accept that its needs have evolved. Physiology responds differently to everything as we age. Stress tolerance decreases. Recovery windows widen. Metabolism slows. Water balance becomes more delicate. And these shifts are not dramatic. They are subtle, quiet. They do not shout, but they whisper persistently. And if you fail to hear them, they grow louder until they manifest as fatigue, dizziness, chronic discomfort, or even acute medical events. The healing practices of your youth, when applied without adjustment, may no longer heal. They may irritate, overwhelm, or destabilize. That's why even something as universally accepted as hydration must be approached with nuance. Be approached with nuance. In old age, flooding the body with water in the morning can dilute sodium levels, increase urine output excessively, and trigger dizziness or confusion. The heart, the kidneys, the vascular system, they all process that intake differently than they did decades earlier. Your biology now requires a different pace, a different volume, a different timing, and recognizing that is not a loss. It is a maturity of awareness. We have to understand the body as a dialogue, not a script. You don't write one set of instructions in your 20s and follow them for life. Why? Life. You listen, you revise, you adjust. Because the conditions change, the system changes, and your relationship with it must evolve. Physiology is alive, adaptive, reactive, but with every decade it speaks a new language. If you insist on responding with old vocabulary, you create misalignment. And misalignment leads to harm, even from behaviors that were once beneficial. This is not a reason to fear aging. It is a reason to respect it. Aging is a shift in the rules of engagement. It demands greater attention to detail, a deeper relationship with cause and effect. What once healed can now harm not because healing is no longer possible, but because the path to healing has changed. Morning rituals must evolve with your biology. The mistake many people make is assuming that once they've discovered a routine that works, it will continue to work indefinitely. That belief is rooted in the illusion of permanence, the assumption that the body, mind, and energy levels you have today will remain constant across decades. But the truth is that biology is not fixed. It is dynamic, responsive, and in a constant state of change. And as your biology evolves, your rituals must adapt to remain effective, or else they risk becoming irrelevant or even harmful. Consider the typical advice surrounding morning routines. Wake up early, drink a large glass of water, stretch, exercise, eat a light breakfast. These steps, when followed in youth or middle age, often lead to feelings of energy and clarity. That's because a younger body responds quickly to stimuli. The cardiovascular system is responsive, metabolism is high, and the kidneys are working at full capacity. But if you carry that same routine into older age without modification, you may notice very different effects: fatigue, lightheadedness, discomfort, or mental fog. And this doesn't mean the routine is wrong. It means the body has changed and the routine hasn't. Morning is the most sensitive time for the human body, especially as it ages. During sleep, the body is in a state of rest and conservation. Blood pressure is lower. Heart rate is slower. Hormonal rhythms are shifting toward wakefulness. The transition from sleep to wake is a complex orchestration of physiological changes. If you disrupt that transition with aggressive behaviors that worked in a younger, more resilient state, you're likely to provoke a stress response rather than stimulate healthy activation. The older body needs a gentler, more intentional start to the day. It needs rituals that support regulation, not disruption. Take hydration as a specific example. Drinking a large quantity of water first thing in the morning is often touted as a health booster. But in an older body, this can lead to a rapid shift in blood volume and electrolyte balance, especially if the kidneys aren't functioning as efficiently. What was once refreshing can now feel destabilizing. Dizziness, nausea, or a sudden urge to urinate can interrupt what was intended to be a positive start. This isn't about rejecting hydration. It's about refining the timing and amount to suit your current biological state. Another common morning ritual is exercise. In youth, high-intensity workouts in the morning can fuel the entire day. The body is primed for it. But with age, joints become more vulnerable, muscles require more time to warm up, and cortisol levels, naturally higher in the morning, can be exacerbated by intense training, leading to fatigue rather than vitality. A ritual that once energized you may now wear you down before the day even begins. Adjusting the type of movement, the intensity, and the timing can transform a stressful shock into a restorative habit. Even the concept of waking up early is nuanced. While discipline and structure are important, older adults often experience shifts in sleep architecture. Lighter sleep, more awakenings, altered circadian rhythms. Forcing the body to rise early without consideration for its natural sleep cycles can lead to cumulative sleep debt and systemic stress. The body may need more flexibility in how it wakes and how it re-enters the demands of the day. Morning rituals must reflect not just ideals of productivity, but realities of biology. What people often fail to realize is that rituals are tools, not rules. They are designed to support your well-being, not constrain it. If your rituals are based on who you used to be, rather than who you are now, they will lose their effectiveness. Worse, they can become harmful. Holding on to outdated routines out of pride, nostalgia, or stubbornness is not a virtue. It's a refusal to grow. Evolution is a sign of maturity. To update your rituals is not to admit weakness, but to demonstrate intelligence. Your body speaks to you differently at every stage of life. The signals are more subtle as you age, but they are still there, waiting for your attention. When you wake up, how you nourish yourself, how you hydrate, how you move, all of it must be tailored to your current state, not your past self. Morning rituals must serve the present version of your biology, not the idealized memory of what once was. That's how you create sustainability. That's how you prevent routines from becoming burdens. That's how you honor the reality of change with wisdom, not resistance. Discipline is not repetition, it's adaptation. This is a concept that many people misunderstand, especially those who pride themselves on being consistent. They believe that doing the same thing every day without fail is the ultimate expression of self-mastery. But that kind of rigidity can become a trap. True discipline is not about stubbornly repeating yesterday's actions. It's about knowing when to pivot, when to change course, and when to let go of what no longer serves you, especially when it comes to the body, especially as it ages. What worked in your 30s will not necessarily work in your 60s. And yet people cling to old routines out of a misplaced sense of loyalty. They think, if I stop doing this, I've failed. But in reality, the failure lies in not evolving. Discipline must account for context, and context changes. Your biology changes. Your energy levels, your hormonal rhythms, your digestive function, your hydration needs. These all shift over time. Being disciplined means staying attuned to these shifts and adjusting your behaviors accordingly. There is a certain kind of pride that comes with saying, I've done the same thing every morning for 20 years, but pride is not always aligned with truth. If that routine no longer benefits your body, if it leaves you fatigued or dizzy or unbalanced, then it's not discipline anymore, it's blindness. The body is not static. Speaks in different tones as time goes on. To ignore that and insist on repetition is to place your ego above your biology. That's not strength. That's rigidity masquerading as control. Adaptation requires humility. It asks you to examine yourself honestly without sentiment. It requires the courage to ask difficult questions. Is this still working for me? Am I doing this out of habit or out of intention? What am I actually listening to? My needs or my pride? The disciplined person is not the one who never changes. The disciplined person is the one who knows when change is necessary and acts on that knowledge without hesitation. Drinking water in the morning is a good example. You may have trained yourself to wake up and immediately down a full glass, believing it's essential for your health. And maybe it once was. But as you age, your kidneys process fluids differently. Your cardiovascular system becomes more sensitive to rapid volume changes. The same glass of water that energized you years ago might now trigger a feeling of lightheadedness or even disrupt your heart rhythm. So what do? It's the willingness to interrupt routine long enough to consider whether it still aligns with your current reality. Adaptation is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal of wisdom. It means you're no longer just repeating behaviors. You're refining them. You're not reacting. You're responding. Discipline, at its highest level, is intelligent flexibility. It's not the ability to repeat the same steps every day. It's the ability to evolve those steps as the path changes beneath your feet. In many ways, our culture confuses discipline with stubbornness. We applaud those who stick to a plan even when that plan becomes harmful. But that's not discipline. That's obsession. Discipline is not about attachment to method. It's about commitment to outcome. If your goal is health, vitality, clarity, and longevity, then your methods must change as your body changes. Holding on to outdated methods in the name of consistency is not only ineffective, it's self-sabotage. The aging body demands more precision, more care, more attention to nuance. Discipline must become more subtle as you grow older, not more forceful. It has to be about listening deeply and acting intentionally. Repeating a morning routine out of memory or habit is not enough. You must ask, what is my body asking for today? What is different about this stage of life? How can I honor that difference with updated action? The truth is, most people resist adaptation because it forces them to acknowledge time. They don't want to admit that they're aging, that they're changing, that the rules are shifting. But denial doesn't stop the process. It only blinds you to it. Real discipline is the opposite of denial. It's radical honesty combined with deliberate action. It's understanding that success isn't about doing the same thing forever. It's about doing the right thing now, even if it's different than what you did before. Longevity is not a gift. It's a responsibility. Too often, people treat long life as though it's simply the reward of good genetics or luck, something that happens to you, rather than something that is shaped by your decisions. But to live long is to take on a greater burden of care, a greater need for awareness, and a greater sensitivity to the systems of the body that are gradually shifting beneath the surface. Aging is not passive. It's active. It demands participation. And the choices you make each day, especially in the seemingly minor things like how and when you hydrate, carry heavier consequences the longer you live. When you are young, your body absorbs the impact of your choices. It covers your mistakes like a well-padded shield, compensating for late nights, poor diets, missed meals, and yes, even erratic hydration. You don't feel the damage because your system is still strong enough to correct for it. But that strength creates a false sense of security. You begin to think that nothing can touch you, that your body is on autopilot. That illusion is what leads many people to stumble blindly into old age, with habits that no longer fit the reality of their biology. Longevity, if you're fortunate enough to experience it, strips away that illusion. You begin to notice that what once felt good now makes you tired. What once gave you energy now leaves you sluggish. What once went unnoticed now becomes a signal, a twinge, a pressure, a flutter, a fatigue. And those signals aren't random. They are the body's way of speaking in a language you may not have learned to understand, but to age well, to sustain vitality, you must learn to listen. There is no greater demonstration of this truth than in the morning hours of the day. Morning is the time when the body transitions from rest to activation. It's when cortisol rises, heart rate increases, blood pressure begins to climb, and systems that were slowed overnight begin to resume full operation. For the older body, this transition is more fragile. The systems take longer to ramp up. The buffers are thinner. And any shock, like a sudden influx of water without food or movement without proper pacing, can create imbalance rather than vitality. Hydration is essential. No one doubts that. But in old age, hydration becomes a more complex equation. The kidneys, which are responsible for filtering and balancing fluids and electrolytes, lose efficiency. The thirst mechanism itself becomes less accurate, which means that the signal to drink is delayed or muted. At the same time, overhydration becomes a risk, particularly in the morning when the body is still in a slow state and not ready to handle large shifts in fluid balance. If you drink a large quantity of water on an empty stomach, the body may not absorb it properly. It may dilute the sodium in your blood. It may lower your blood pressure temporarily, leading to dizziness or even fainting. And in some cases, it can place stress on the heart or kidneys, systems already working with reduced capacity. Longevity demands precision, not fear, but attention. Well, it's not about avoiding water. It's about timing, quantity, context. It's about understanding how your body responds differently at 70 than it did at 30. It's about realizing that even the healthiest habits can become harmful if applied indiscriminately. Drinking water in the morning might be good advice in general, but for someone in advanced age, it must be adjusted. Maybe it means sipping slowly rather than chugging. Maybe it means pairing hydration with a small meal. Maybe it means spacing out water intake rather than front-loading it at the start of the day. None of this is about restriction. It's about refinement. The responsibility of longevity is to become more conscious, more responsive, more aligned with what your body is actually telling you. You've lived long enough to have a deeper relationship with your own physiology. That relationship must be based on more than habit. It must be built on awareness. The older you get, the more sensitive your system becomes to fluctuations in rhythm, timing, and consistency. That sensitivity is not a weakness. It's an opportunity to tune in more closely, to develop a daily rhythm that respects the natural intelligence of your body. It means treating your morning not as a task to be conquered, but as a process to be honored. A gentle, respectful awakening of your system, not a shock to its equilibrium. This mindset of tending to your health with intention and nuance is not just about adding years to your life, but adding life to your years.